How's everybody? Thanks for showing up to the 4 o'clock meeting. I think you guys are all troopers there, so appreciate that. My name is Travis Sandifer. I'm Executive Program Director for Turner and Townsend, and I'm an aviation nerd. So we got some other aviation people here too, and I was excited about the meeting or the session earlier. I'm at the IH. I lead the IH Terminal Redevelopment Program at George Bush Intercontinental. And I'm excited for that because we're going to open some beautiful spaces later this year. And prior to that, I was at DFW helping deliver their capital plan. I just wanted to first acknowledge, like, this feels like a talk show a little bit, and we just need a DJ in the side to keep it exciting. I will be revealing who the father is at the end. So. I do have to look at my notes. My memory's terrible, or I'll forget the smart things that I wrote down. So I'm excited to have, we have BJ Carpenter here, the Sustainability Coordinator from the City of Austin Aviation Department. James Wood from the Sustainability Project Manager from DFW Airport. And then you met Kyle earlier. He's our Sustainability Head for Turner and Townsend. And also have to admit I'm a sneakerhead and I'm jealous because he's showing us up today. So my focus is making delivery happen. And in aviation, we are just in a building mode right now. We're trying to increase capacity. We're updating aged facilities. We're modernizing the operations. And we're very focused on the customer experience. So these are all mission critical to the airports, to the airlines, to continue to meet the needs of the traveling public. And I think the airports are challenged in meeting the growth demands now and advancing the sustainability and net zero initiatives. So that's what I want this panel to explore is, and I think it's a huge opportunity to combine our airport and infrastructure capital investments with the sustainability efforts. And how do we do this in a way that benefits all of our needs? So, and those needs will benefit the environment, airport operations, the customer experience, in communities, and I think it can be done and benefit the bottom line as well. So, before we get started, I did want each panelist just to quickly introduce yourself and talk through what you're focused on.
My name is BJ Carpenter. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator at Austin Bergstrom International Airport. Been there about 7 years and working on everything from carbon footprint calculations and reductions of all different kinds of resources to waste diversion. So it's kind of an across-the-board job that I have, I guess you could say. It's pretty interesting, though. I like it.
Hi, I'm James Wood. I'm Sustainability Project Manager for DFW Airport. I'm one of about 7 people. We have a huge department. We deal with all the same issues, solid waste, net zero, energy efficiency. And I'm new to aviation, but I have a transit background. So a lot of the issues are similar, but happy to talk about what we're doing.
Good afternoon. I'm Kyle Goering, Head of Sustainability at Turner & Townsend. Been in sustainability since late 2007. Been with Turner & Townsend for about a year now, and our focus really is decarbonizing the built environment and putting together proper strategies. So we'll talk about that. I will say I fly out of DFW. I live in Collin County, and the sustainability, you can certainly see that there at the airport. And so you're doing a great job there, James, and I look forward to learning more here. So thank you.
Okay, thanks. So I wanted to start with the BJ because I think, Texas is booming. Austin is absolutely at the center of that for sure. So what I want to know is how do you and the team at AUS balance your current infrastructure, future capacity needs that we've talked about today, not just infrastructure and all in period and the aviation side, and how do you balance that with your net zero and carbon neutrality goals? And how do you integrate those goals into the capital planning process? And what drives the decisions for specific projects? And how do you measure success? So just answer all that really quickly. How do you do that?
just that, huh? Well, I wish there was a simple answer to that. I think that in the case of Austin, we are a incredibly fast growing area of the United States, as well as a fast growing airport. We've gone from what's considered a medium hub airport to a large hub airport, which includes a lot of different things that come along with it. But we have had a really strong ground game, I guess you could say, since the building of that airport, from the reuse of the concrete from the old Air Force Base to all kinds of different aspects of environmental concepts have been included from the ground up, really, I would say. Austin is a very environmentally friendly city, really concerned about sustainability. So that's a really strong background. It comes from all the various departments as well. What we're doing at the airport, we lean on from the sustainability side, kind of what's being done in the city of Austin with the Climate Equity Action Plan, all the different ordinances, universal recycling ordinance, to all the different things that the city has put in place, and that helps us implement further at the airport. Green building. We've been building, LEED Silver and up buildings for many years now. But when you jump into a transition of development like we're doing now, everybody was sitting there at the starting line in 2019, ready to jump the gun and start bringing in the contractors and get the ball rolling and really kick things off. And then boom, everything gets shut down for 2 years because of COVID. So now we're 2 years behind and we're trying to find a way to catch up. One of the things about airports, the growth doesn't stop while you're taking a breath. The area kept growing. Every time we build extra gates on, by the time they open, we're already millions of passengers behind throughput per year. So what we're trying to do at ABIA is we're trying to follow the lead of some of the other airports. DFW is a great example. They're one of the sustainable leading airports in the world. The airport industry really shares a lot of information and best practices across the entire spectrum, whether it be internationally or locally, and we all learn from each other. So we're trying to put in place a sustainable philosophy at the airport with basically 4 pillars: environmental, social, financial, and the 4th pillar for airports. It makes it different than all the other infrastructure projects, or at least a lot of them, maybe not all of them. Is operations. We have to maintain operations. We build it, we have to operate it. We have to keep that going, and it has to stay functioning for all of the years and all the growth we're going to experience. So we're trying to put those 4 pillars as a basis of the decision-making matrix across all decisions. You want to build a new cup that's going to power the current existing Barbara Jordan terminal and the upcoming Terminal B. Well, C and D are not too far down the road when you look at it from the long scheme. Is that going to meet the needs operationally? Is it going to make sense financially? And can we include green infrastructure and smart decisions at this key moment here in Austin to meet the goals of the city? The city has sustainability goals that are very ambitious. We're talking about net zero. Every new building after 2030 is going to be built net zero. Well, how do you start doing that? A lot of that's going to be depending upon a cup. So you got to think about that next 10 years and the next 20 years with the infrastructure we're building right now. So we're trying to focus that development, get the decision makers on board with this foundational framework. And as we move through that, build our sustainability master plan, and then the step-by-step process of how we get from point A to point B. Because if we don't think about it now, and with all of y'all's help and what I've learned here today and what consultants can help us with and the private sector across the board, we're not going to achieve the goals the city of Austin wants to achieve. So it's a real challenge when you look at development at this pace to make sure that the sustainability side of it's being considered, from carbon capture and concrete to electrical cups that are being put in at DFW to, geothermal, all of these different things that are being done across the nation. We're trying to work those into the development, and our team at the top is really looking at that now. And that's really beneficial for us to be able to have a support from the top down, not just from the bottom up historically.
Yeah, just staying on this topic, curious on the capital, how does that happen? Like, how is your group integrated with the capital planning process when you got people on the operations side wanting to add gates or capacity, or do this for the customer like today? Like everybody said, they need things tomorrow. How are you integrating that into your requirements or design? Is it all seamless, very easy, or I think I know the answer to that, but like, what are you guys actually doing to make that happen? Are you changing design guidelines? Are you making new standards? And just curious on your
We
view and James's as well.
we are making the new standards right now. That's one of the things that we've been moving forward is trying to develop the development design guides to include a sustainability aspect to them. What are the things we need to meet? What are our goals as the airport? So defining the sustainability goals and then working backwards through the KPIs and the check boxes that need to be ticked off by the project managers. Is this being considered? Okay, is this being considered and not being considered because of money or not being considered because of speed, or what is it? Now we want it all to be considered. You have to look at it from that four foundations thought process. And that if you put that foundation in place, that somebody's thought about how this affects operations, somebody thought about how it affected environmental, social, the community, as well as financial. If you think about it, if you think about every decision in that framework, you're building those checks and balances to be able to get that in there, and the decisions don't get made based simply upon speed or based upon money. There's other things that have value, and this community values that, and so does the airport, and our leadership values that. So it's putting the framework in the decision-making matrix of, do we go this way or that way on every single project? And it's been a challenge, and it really, honestly, it's involved the environmental group buzzing around and bugging all the project managers for a number of years to get those things put in place. But now it's becoming, when you build this quickly, it has to be a formality. It can't be oh, I missed that meeting, I didn't get that idea in there. Now it's got to be actually documented and formatted formally for it to actually succeed.
Yeah. So James, I'm familiar with how DFW works. I was out there for a while, and just curious, are you really engaged on the planning side now? Are you guys integrating those design standards and how, and like you said, you guys are leaders, so we're curious how you guys are managing that part.
It really varies by department and also by individual partners. The planning department is typically on board with this sort of thing. The CEO really loves sustainability. He's always eager to hear about the latest technologies, the latest conferences. So it's good to have them in our corner, but we're getting into more technical departments with our fleet transition to go electric on all of our buses and ground support equipment, and dealing with utilities. We're building a new electric cup, and those departments are familiar with a certain way of doing business and preferences, and it's a bit of an education effort to sit with the departments and show them not just the financial benefits, but also in terms of technology, in terms of long-term service for these new types of vehicles. It's a struggle, but we're kind of right in the middle of it, and we try to find a way to balance it. Same goes for our partners. We have one particular airline partner that's the biggest whale in our fish tank, and they have their own sustainability goals. We try to work with them as much as we can, but sometimes it comes into conflict, but it seems like we always come back to education. That's our best way of winning people over and moving the conversation. That's our current next step.
What about you, Kyle? Any thoughts on the planning and building for now and building planning for the sustainability of the future, and how do you do both?
Yeah, we've since we've been sort of a leader in this. Apparently, I'm new to the airport. Now we're moving into these next steps, which is what comes next. How do we keep the sustainability going? And we're ACA level airport carbon accreditation level 4, which is the highest I believe they'll grant at this point. And initially you can just make a commitment, but now to follow on years later, you have to show concrete ways that you've actually advanced your commitment and stakeholder partnerships. And we have to document the nature of all these relationships and to show that real progress is being made for customers as well as our clients. And as far as buildings, I'm at a loss. I usually work with vehicles, to be honest.
Okay.
That's my area. I don't get to work much with construction.
Well, Kyle, what are your thoughts on that whole planning effort and building for now and
Well,
the future?
these two gentlemen in their airports are doing a fantastic job, but it really comes down to a strategy, setup, and delivery process, right? So first, establishing that strategy, and there are some great industry groups out there that are establishing strategies out there, and you have different levels of certification that are available. And I think there's a really a sharing of best practices, which is crucial. But where we seek to come in there, Travis, is kind of get that stakeholder alignment right away. Who needs to have a seat at the table? What is the proper cadence of communication? That includes finance, that includes operations, that includes real estate. What is the longer term objective? And so creating the right strategy, a net zero target by 2040 or 2050, what does that really entail? And then once you have that proper strategy, looking to develop that roadmap, those series of interventions, right? You can take care of the low-hanging fruit, the low cost, no cost, if you will. Certain opportunities are more readily available or have a greater return on investment. But to hit net zero, you have to continue to improve. You have to continue to advance that. There are only so many light bulbs you can change out, or low flow toilets, or these other energy efficiency solutions. At some point, you have to look at what else can be done. And I think we see a lot of improvements with embodied carbon in material selection and really quantifying what that looks like. I think there's some great software solutions out there that can establish the appropriate baseline. But once you have that baseline, once you can quickly determine what needs to be done soon, you also need to build that roadmap overall, say what needs to be done 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and how do these interventions stack up? And then how can I justify to the stakeholders that I have that I'm doing the right things, that this is the best use of my capital? And when it comes to capital, really looking at it that way, are you looking for the best or the highest return on investment initially, or are you looking at some type of longer term ROI? And knowing at some point the interventions that you're implementing aren't going to have a great payback, if any payback at all. But the alternative is that you're going to have to buy carbon offsets at some point, and those carbon offsets are only going up more in cost. And so at an early stage as well, you need to establish an internal price of carbon, right? So what is that price of carbon, and how are you using that in your financial models? And so is that $100, as some people propose? Some are saying $330. And so if you use that as the target, then a lot of these investments, which are reducing carbon, make a lot more financial sense at the outset. And then you just determine, what can I do next year, 5 years, 10 years, and understand that new technologies will be available. A couple of them have been mentioned. You have great heat recovery systems. Geothermal is really attractive right now as well. You have carbon capture that's being implemented within airports also. You look at renewable energy, right? So renewable energy is a great technology that can be implemented. Storage increasingly makes sense. The integration of said renewable energy into EV charging, what does that infrastructure look like? And are you actually going to be using natural gas or carbon-based fuels to power these assets, or are they going to be fully electrical? What energy infrastructure needs to be changed out? What does that look like overall? And how can you justify the replacement of that at an early stage? So really strategy, setup, and then you need to have the right partners for delivery. How long is this really going to take? Do I have the right amount budgeted in the future? And do I have the right partner that can ensure that we are doing the right things? Do I have that quality assurance that's there? There are some great leaders out there internationally as well. And some airports can do more with biodiversity. So understanding your local community and what can be done there in terms of native plants and vegetation. That can't be done all places. And so working within the community, prioritizing what the broader community is doing. And so to BJ's point, that the city of Austin is a leader. And so aligning with that city's group, and understanding what environmentally we should be focusing on and what is our North Star as an airport associated with this community. And, it's not a one size fits all. And so you really need to have that right strategy beginning, establishing a program or a roadmap, and then budgeting appropriately for these interventions over the next 5, 10, 25 years.
Great. Yeah. Well, you kind of teed me up here. So next thing I wanted to talk about was community, and I want to start with James because I feel like DFW's focus on the community and communications always been there, and I've seen it around the sustainability effort and your net zero efforts there. So just curious on what is your strategy? I know it's conscious, but what is your continued strategy to work with the community? How does the sustainability part affect and benefit the community? And your traveling customers?
So BJ is lucky that he has one airport owner, and I believe he works directly for that city government. Okay. Um, we don't. DFW has two owner cities, Dallas and Fort Worth, and we have four what we call host communities whose physical land is underneath the airport. And they represent the bulk of our elected leadership. They're our main local partners. We also work with TxDOT and also the Regional Council of Governments. But engaging with them as a board of directors, as a decision making body, we often have to bring it to them in terms that speak to their constituencies. They have the traditional issues with airports, noise, traffic, access to jobs, that sort of thing. But in discussing sustainability issues, we've often had to couch it in terms of immediate economic and air quality issues. DFW has famously poor air quality, so bad that it's they're having to add a new category to the chart. So we're able to say that it may cost a little bit more money, such as when we made the switch to renewable energy. We get all of our electricity from Texas wind farms, which is a big part of why we're the largest carbon neutral airport in North America. That that transition was expensive and complicated, and you had a lot of pushback saying, why mess up a good thing? So we had to sort of couch it in those economic terms as well as air quality terms. We're making this transition now with buses. A generation ago, we switched from diesel buses to natural gas, which they burn a lot cleaner than diesel, but they're not zero emission. So now we're moving again, we're moving ahead of the bus replacement schedule to go electric as quick as we can. And there's pushback as, why replace buses before the end of their life? CNG is cleaner than diesel. And so again, it's about, reaching out to them and say it's local air quality. It's cleaning up the air that you breathe in your community. We're also doing a lot of outreach with the local school districts. We have a month-long, it's Earth Day, but it's really Earth Month of events with school children. They come onto our property, which is kind of an accidental nature preserve, and they hunt for fossils in the clay soil. We educate about biodiversity, accidental and deliberate. And we also have, the traditional internships and business opportunities. But we've had a lot of success educating our host communities in economic terms as well as environmental terms. And we're able to sort of hone that ability with each project, and we're getting better at it. So they're generally proud of us, generally supportive of us, but we always have to make sure we capture those values in our arguments.
Great. So, BJ, do you guys have a specific community engagement plan, or is that just a natural thing you guys have been doing?
Truthfully, over the years, there's been lots of different ways. Traditional media has been more of a normal outlet for us as things are happening. I think that's really grown a lot in the last probably 4 or 5 years. It seems like every day I turn on the TV, there's something going on about, unfortunately a little while about passengers standing outside trying to get in the terminal or other things. But I think that the airport is working hard to be a good neighbor in the community. We've got everything from backpack drives with Del Valley. We've got a long history with Del Valley. The school was actually originally built from the airport helped build the original school when it was moved the first time. There's been a lot of communication, but I still think there's quite a long ways to go to improve that. And as communication is changing, our new PIO department has been expanded and is really looking at all the different ways to communicate. The younger generations don't watch news. They don't turn on KView and sit there and get their information as much as they do from Twitter or from Facebook or from different media outlets. And we're finding the effectiveness of that is kind of astounding. Some of the challenges we've had have been actually resolved through the use of alternative media, social media. I know that when we had an outage one time about a year ago, the first useful tool was Twitter, really, to get the information out there to the passengers that were coming to the airport. Lots of people were able to find out about it. I had people sending me photos that were there that were my friends trying to move on and get onto planes and travel. But I think that, public relations as a whole and communication as a whole at the airport is and the city as well is something that we're constantly striving to find new ways to improve. It's kind of shocking when you're on the side of trying to get the information out and you realize how difficult it really is to get the information out there. It can be on media, social media, across the board, and then you've still got 50 people walking up to you asking you a question about it that don't know the answer. So it's a constant challenge to try to figure out how to do that. I think we're doing a good job of it, but I think we can always improve upon that aspect.
And sometimes you can use some of the terminal experience as a way to sort of get buy-in from your customers and educate while you're also initiating sustainability. Like, for example, we have a program, we're starting it in Terminal D, the international terminal, but we hope to eventually have the entire property covered in it. It's a View brand Sense Glass. It's a company called View. They basically put an electrochromic coating on windows to where the windows tint themselves in the sun. And, it's like transitions lenses, but for large windows. And it's a demonstration project. We mainly did it to save energy in our buildings. These tinting windows save about 15% on our air conditioning costs. And it also makes it more comfortable for customers. They can sit closer to the windows now, and there's a lot less glare. So on the one hand, it has its financial benefit. We're able to try this out very, very cheaply and save a lot of money. But also, it's on Twitter, it's on TikTok. People love the tinting windows. And now they even have little moving sort of television broadcasts within the tinted windows. And right now it's butterflies that look cute, but eventually I'm sure it'll be advertising space. But things like that, or we're testing, we found a lot of people didn't recycle their bottles at the TSA checkpoints because they still had liquid in them and there was no place to pour out the remaining liquid to recycle the bottle. So we got these cute little rolling carts from a European company that they just have personality to them, and they encourage people to pour liquids, and it makes weird little noises when you pour liquid, and it's a way to make something boring a little bit more fun, and it gets social buzz, it gets people thinking and educating themselves, and so it builds on our traditional marketing and media strategies to go a little bit viral with some of our stuff.
Yeah, those windows are cool. I remember it, and I think that's the word of the day: electrochromatic coating. Is that right? So, well, we have about 5 minutes left. My last topic I wanted Kyle to jump on this and it's about money. So, yes, I think we all know we need to go to net zero and carbon neutrality, but how do we actually do that? And I think the traditional thought is, oh, we'll just get some funding for some program. Somebody will pay us to do it because it's good for the environment or the city wants us to do it. But I think we need to spend capital dollars on it and actually make conscious decisions to fiscally fund these things because it's actually a smart thing to do financially too. So I wanted to just kind of talk about how do you connect that and make that connection with the taxpayers and the council members and say, hey, we need to spend this much money, but it's not just good for the environment. It doesn't feel good, but it's also great for operations and it'll save us money. How do we connect those dots?
Yeah, that's a great question, Travis, because it is quite complicated and you have varied stakeholders. It is something that does require coordinated communication and a strategic pathway forward with them. And I think to James's point, he's in a complicated environment with different cities and obviously different shareholders or stakeholders there. It is really the alignment of some of those other benefits, right? The health benefits associated with that, the impact on the community and what that's going to do as well. And you bring forward, talking about children coming there and getting engaged within the airport and seeing that firsthand, the sustainability. There is a community benefit with that. And so you can use that as a STEM learning lesson. You can encourage people to get more involved in the sciences overall, and there are positive contributions. So I would say there is a coordinated effort externally. Internally as well, you just really need to establish, like I said, that cost of carbon and also understand that there are going to be pressures on you from some of your partners, whether it be the whale in your fishbowl that's putting pressure on you because they have ambitions and your scope 1 and scope 2 emissions are their scope 3 emissions. And if they're going to hit net zero, you need to do a better job. And so if you want to maintain some of those relationships, maybe charge a higher gate fee or maybe get the right person inside of your airport, you need to do the right things. And so there is sometimes a green premium associated with doing the more environmentally friendly thing, but you can often recapture that premium through maybe strategic advertising, maybe charging more per square foot for some of the inhabitants inside of your airport. But overall, there are requirements at a governing body level to be net zero, right? And so there are some solutions today that maybe not be economically viable, but will be. And you also see that with aviation fuel. That'll be more prevalent in the coming years. So some things will make more economic sense in the future, but it starts with stakeholder alignment now and understanding that a dollar spent today is certainly a dollar saved and possibly multiple returned in the future.
Okay, great. Yes.
Our leadership has this expression that offsets are not efficiency. And the airport right now, we do purchase carbon offsets. We're carbon neutral on paper, but it's ultimately long-term, it's creative accounting. And so the carbon capture technologies and all the innovative ways to remove carbon from the air, they like us to think of that as the absolute last resort. We want to get to about 92% of our reduction through building efficiencies and replacing, emitting equipment with zero emission equipment. So that is so low down the list of priorities, they don't even like to hear about it at meetings. Carbon sequestration. They tell us just have greener buildings. It's an old facility. It's 50 years old next year. Almost everything needs replacing. So our priority is on reducing our footprint as much as possible. That way we don't have to, bury it or sequester it or pay someone else to keep a forest. So we're trying to take personal ownership of our emissions and reduce them as much as we can.
Okay, great. We got like 1 minute left. We had a moment for one closing statement. I'll give it to BJ because you're the host city. So
I just wanted to continue on with this question. I think it's a good question. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned is something that a project I'm working on that we're just finishing up is our first ESG report, which is an environmental social governance report. So on the one end, we're talking about on the downstream side of doing stuff with the money. What are we going to do with it? Are we going to do the right green stuff with it, et cetera? But on the upstream side, just getting the money now in the world, there is the people that are providing the money are asking you, what are you doing about environmental concerns? What are you doing about your risk from a social standpoint? What are you doing about it, from a governance standpoint? So borrowers, airports are having to explain we're seeing these risks, we're addressing these risks, and if we can't fix them yet, we're going to fix them, and that's what an ESG report is. So it's looking at the airport from a risk standpoint through those different lenses, and we're putting our first one out this year. And I think the purpose of that ultimately is it goes back to the bondholders or the people that issue the bonds to help them realize that we're not a big risk. And it actually lowers the bond rating to where we get the money at a cheaper interest rate than we would if we didn't. So I think from that side, it's also a really big benefit to show that we're doing the right things so we can lower the rates on our money that we're borrowing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't think anybody wants to invest in dirty projects anymore. So it's not a thing that people want to do. So that's our time. Just give our panel a round of applause. Thank you.